So hi, I'm Bob Summerwill. Hello everybody. I'm going to be talking today a little bit about my ongoing escape from Google and Apple. So yeah, over the last year and a half, I've finally had a concerted effort to migrate myself away from my Apple dependencies after a number of years of being in that world. I have not used Windows for many years, so that's not been a problem. But Apple have got very nice hardware, and Google have got useful services. So yeah, just a little bit of a story. So we're going to start here in 1984, but it was my 1984, not the fictional 1984, which was the year that I started programming when I was 10. And it was quite a different world then. On the left here, we've got the wonderful BBC Micro, only really known to British people, sadly. Wonderful system. Also, we've got the ZX Spectrum again, maybe a little British. Commodore 64, well known. But this is where I started back in the 8-bit days. And did have a very early IBM PC. Well, it wasn't an IBM PC, it was a PC compatible. And this all started for me because my dad was a self-taught programmer as well, and he brought computers home in the evening. And yeah, it was a simpler time. You had fixed hardware, proprietary, operating systems, proprietary, but everything was just really in a local file system, and even if you had proprietary lower layers, they were very open platforms. You know, if you had a PC, you've got your PC and you can run whatever you're running on it. So in terms of a practical experience, you know, no networking either, it was really simple, right? You know, you had stuff that you bought on tapes, or you got your disk drives, and you're copying things around. And copying was a key thing, right? Is everyone was ripping off things. Nobody ever bought anything. You know, you could copy everything. It was very simple, right? Everything's files, and there you go. You know, so how does that work? My dad's workflow in the 1980s is probably very similar to what he does right now. Running Windows, you got files on your computer, you back them up onto an external hard disk, using Outlook, my goodness. He does do website development though, but of static stuff. So you don't have it's not even Web 2, it's Web 1. And talking to him recently, he said, I've never trusted cloud services. And he doesn't really do anything online either. And on the mobile side, he's got a smartphone because he has to. But he maybe does mobile browsing, makes phone calls, doesn't really text, don't really use any apps. This workflow is actually great for personal freedom because everything's in your hands, right? It's just files on a file system, and there you go. You know, it's all yours. You're not reliant on any service provider, on any accounts, of logins, anything. But yeah, that isn't what most of us do. You know, we've moved on. You know, you had Web 2.0 of applications where, you know, you are editing stuff, you're contributing, your content is up there, it's on, you know, it's on other people's computers. You know, the cloud is really just other people's computers. You know, smartphones popped in, and then the killer, and it was Apple who did this, right, with the Apple Store, is all of a sudden it became a closed garden, you know, a walled garden, a beautiful walled garden, of applications that just work great, and they've got a certain quality bar, but you've become a digital sharecropper, really. And over time, we've just had more and more of these things coming in, which are really convenient, high quality services that help us, but also enslave us. And then on the advertising model, I mean, that's really more Google than it is anyone else, is all of these wonderful free services that we have come dependent on. But the model that was there in the 80s switched over an awful lot, and we kind of sleepwalked into it a bit. So yeah, you don't own anything. Most workflows that people have got, we've switched from this ownership model. And that ownership model, really, you can see that in physical media. So cassette tapes. Everyone had, tapes, and you'd copy tapes around of your music, and, here, I've made a mix for you, made a tape for you. And, or CDs, or VHS videos, all of this stuff. It was really like a physical kind of ownership of the media, right? You've gone instead to revocable licenses. You get permission to access the files. So there's a very telling incident I had a few years ago where I was over in Europe I live in Vancouver in Canada. I was over in Europe for a conference, and I got a call from my wife going, we can't get into the movies on the Apple TV, there's some problem with it, and the kids are wanting to watch the movie and we can't. And what had happened, and I'm sure this is still the case, is iTunes bundled and bundles access with kind of like streaming. So you buy a movie through iTunes, and that gives you a license to watch it, but they're also providing, the ability to stream that content to any device around the world, which is undoubtedly convenient. But the two of them are bundled together, and what had happened is my credit card had expired, right? I didn't owe them anything, but because they didn't have that billing capability going forward, they shut off access. And I'm sure this happens now, right? So you don't have an up-to-date credit card, so they can charge you in the future. Well, fuck you. $1,000 worth of, hundreds of things that you've bought, you haven't bought. And yeah, like, I'm thinking, we talk about self-custody frequently in crypto, but you've got exactly the same patterns in terms of files, in terms of your data, in terms of your digital assets. And your digital assets could be your files, your photos, any of your content, right? That we're not self-custodying, right? We've gone to a custodial setup for everything, right? And we're doing everything online. So basically, all of your everything is by default for most people in a custodial setup where that can get yanked away at will for anything. And yeah, big tech runs the world. Top 5 companies in the world by market cap. NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. And I mean, that's changed over the last 10, 20 years, right? It used to be like Saudi Aramco and big banks and so on. But yeah, if you look at these big companies, it's all the same playbook, right? They want to control the operating system. They want to have an app store on it. They want to force all of the commerce through their app store to have the 30%. Thank you very much. Just leave your things with us, right? We'll look after it for you. It's fine. Use it anywhere. But you become a digital sharecropper. You're living at their whim. So during 2013 to 2015, in a prior life, I was very involved with mobile Linux. So you had a brief period before Apple and then Google raised everything to the ground, where you had more variety of mobile operating systems, like BlackBerry. I mean, BlackBerry, God, did they fumble the ball. They were so dominant early on, but you had, in this period, a chance of having like a third or fourth platform to compete in there. So MIMO and MeeGo were from Nokia. I mean, Nokia, God, did they fuck up as well. But also, at that time, you had Ubuntu Touch, you had Firefox OS, so you had Mozilla and Ubuntu trying to join in there. And Tizen is the one that I was most directly involved with there. So that was actually a Linux Foundation project with Intel and Samsung were the leads on that. And really what you had with Samsung is like Samsung wanting to get out from underneath Google, because Samsung are a massive company. They've got their own semiconductors and mobile and washing machines and cameras. Samsung do everything, so it's kind of ludicrous that they would like suffer all that shit to go through Google. All of the commerce on Samsung devices goes through the Google Play service, right? It's Google who get the money out of that, not Samsung. It's crazy. So I was trying to see if that reality could happen, right, and that we could actually come out with a mobile Linux standard with a rich set of companies and products in that, where you'd have an alternative. This is a great article that came out in 2013 and was re-released in 2018, which was talking about Google's control of that Android ecosystem, even though it's open source. As in, there's a whole bunch of like nefarious, nasty shit that Google do around Android to try and really lock that down. And most of that really is around Google Play services and around their app suite. So it's like, right, if you want to do an Android device, you have to use Gmail, you have to ship with YouTube, and you've got to use Google Maps and Google Docs, and if you have to have those up front, and also the worst thing is that there's this like carrier program thing that you have to be in the Google gang, and you have to promise that you're never going to like fork away from them. Like you're not allowed to defect. If you defect, you will have your Google license will be withdrawn, and you'll be scorched from the ground. So yeah, this was what was happening. Samsung were ready to ditch Android. It nearly happened. Well, it basically looked like what they were going to do is have two parallel product lines. It's like, right, we're going to have Galaxy devices for the West, but we're going to have our own, Linux-based alternative for the rest of the world, and we're going to break free from Google. Anyway, needless to say, it didn't happen, and it was all a disaster, and we're all enslaved. This is actually where I started getting involved on Ethereum as well. I was seeing if I could get the C++ client working on mobile Linux and smartwatches and wearable and so on. And my company was Doublethink, talking about the 1984 reference. So yeah, it failed. Critical mass was not achieved. iOS and Android won. Mobile Linux is still around, but it's basically like a hobby thing now. You can get yourself a Pine phone, or you can get a Liberty phone from Librem, starting at $1,999 for a device that doesn't have any apps. but it's free-ish. Coming out of that, I kind of got this conclusion that Android open source project was a useless battle, right? That you have got, this open source core to Android, which, various people have built Android devices without the Google bits. Cyanogen Modern Lineage, maybe one of the better known ones. So, for a long time I thought, well, it's a losing battle. It's, why would you build on top of that Google stuff to try and get away from Google? Like, aren't you forever going to be like playing whack-a-mole? So for a long time I didn't look at any of these things. But something which, again, I didn't really think about until about a year or so ago is that having, a pure kind of free software view is not necessarily entirely aligned with privacy or security. All of these are actually quite different axes. And if you follow a Free Software Foundation kind of view, that software freedom is put above privacy and security, right? That purity is put above a quality experience, but yeah, also above privacy and security. And so if you look at the ethical giving guide, these are the Free Software Foundation sort of recommendations of don't you be using Mac or Netflix or anything at all. What we recommend that you do is you run Replicant on a Galaxy S3, because we can run that without any binary blobs, right? We can do that. However, it was released 12 fucking years ago. You're running 12-year-old hardware. Or hey, have a free laptop. That's from 2008. 16-year-old hardware. God knows how old any software components going into that are. It's the most insecure, dreadful kind of choice that you could have. But I was thinking, well, it's one or the other, right? You can have your freedom, or you can have the convenience. But that isn't actually true. So Graphene OS, I hadn't really seriously looked at until recently because of this kind of history. But what you have with Graphene is it is a hardened, privacy and security-oriented Android open source project. And what that gives you, here's another thing, it's only available for Pixel devices. So, okay, so you're running on hardware made by Google, you're running an operating system made by Google, but this is still privacy and freedom? Like, what the hell? But the reality is, I think this is the best there is, and it's actually really good. And the reason why is that if you look at those, 12, 16-year-old hardware versions, you've got something which is just chronically insecure. If you think about running your own machine and going, yeah, like all those security updates, I'm going to ignore that pop-up for 16 years. Like, come on. So, the reality is that all of the work going into Android, both from Google, but from many, many other companies, right, is delivering huge security and privacy, benefits. Same with upstream Linux kernel. So really, you can't compete with this. Like, there's billions of dollars worth of effort going into that. And the fact is that these large companies, they're not, everyone working in them is not evil. All of the projects coming out of them are not evil. You basically, all open source tech in the world, major projects, is getting funded by major companies because that's where the money is, right? But what you actually have happening in that Android stack is there's tons of privacy and security work happening, right, which has got nothing to do whatsoever with Google's own business model, which is kind of layered higher up. So what you get with that is really a very, very high quality experience. And you can use Google Play services in a sandbox safe way where you need, but for an awful lot of the time, you don't really need that. So what you've got here is you can have multiple user profiles. There's about 2 or 3 different ways of kind of segmenting things around, but this is what I've got. So that's my main profile on the left here. But then you can switch over into a different profile where I've got googly things happening that I haven't been able to get away from. So yeah, this is my general stack I've got right now. So Proton Mail's been around for a long time, but they've actually got a whole bunch of other things now. Calendar, Drive, they've got like a password manager, they've got a VPN, they've got a whole load of things, and it's really getting decently close to being a straight alternative for the equivalent kind of services that you have on the Google side. You can import all of your Gmail in, so you've got your history. You've got kind of like an auto upload of photos, much the same. On the messaging front, these are sort of familiar things. Various VPN options. So KeePass and Aegis are a password manager and a 2FA. SyncThing and Obtainium, I think, are really very interesting. I'll get to those in a little while. So yeah, that's Proton Mail. Proton Drive and Photos. Went to one of the temples the other day. It was quite nice. Calendar there. I've been through various different VPN options. On the left there, that's iVPN. In the middle is Mullvad. Both Mullvad and iVPN are kind of pretty similar. You can set up that VPN without any kind of email identification or anything. You just get like an account number, and you can pay for it in Lightning or Bitcoin. Not sure if Monero, but basically, hey, set up a VPN. There you go, without any tie back to you. I've been playing around a little bit with NimVPN recently. That's kind of new. So what you have on NimVPN there's 2 different options. You can run their full-on mixnet, which is basically like a Tor alternative, which is perhaps stronger than Tor in certain ways, or you can just have a straight WireGuard. I use Orbit as well. So Orbit is basically like a Tor, I don't know what you'd call it, Tor provision service thing, which again you can run on any Android device as well. But yeah, what you have here is you can choose particular applications to route through Tor. So you can, with the NIM setup there on the NIM VPN, if you run NIM with the mixnet, that's doing your whole device. But Orbit here is just routing particular devices through, so different kind of model. So KeePass here, fairly standard kind of password manager. But the interesting thing with KeePass is it's kind of going back to my dad's model. Because what you have with KeePass is you have a file called keyboard database or whatever it is, that key DBX. So that's literally just a file. It's a binary file on the file system on your phone. So, if you're making changes, that file is going to change. But there's no cloud service here, right? There's no provider. You're not uploading this anywhere. It's just like a file that you have on your phone. Aegis, similar thing. So this is a 2FA. Again, you know, there's no central server, no nothing. You've just got files on your phone. But then it's like, okay, so you've just got files on your phone. Like, well, how does that work then? Like, if you lose your device, you lose it forever, or there's no security. How's that happening? And the answer here is SyncThing. So what SyncThing does is it is an application for doing synchronization between your devices. So I have SyncThing running on the phone, but it's also running on my laptop, and it's also running on my office computer, and it's also running on a second device I have. So what you have is just when these devices happen to be on at the same time, they are talking to each other. Hey, you got any updates, anything going on? And it's doing an rsync between all of these devices. So in your file system here, and I don't know if any of you guys were at Amir's talk just recently where he was talking about people, Gen Z people not understanding about file systems. Anyway, on Android, there is an application called Files, and you can look at your file system. And, you know, DCIM is kind of like, you know, it's like a camera photos thing, but you've also got a bunch of these others. So what you have is on the SyncThing, I've got a folder called SyncThing with subfolders for particular devices, and then if you look in Aegis or KeyPass, you've just got files there. So Aegis is doing a daily kind of backup, and KeyPass is not. So what you have is both for these two applications, but also just for general like photos that I'm taking on my device or whatever, that they're just getting background sunk, but not to the cloud, to my other computers. So I'm kind of doing what my dad did and does of just having files and having a backup routine, right? There's no service provider, there's no intermediary, it's just me, it's straight peer-to-peer. So yeah, all you do is you sort of set up folders that you want to be synced. And for a given folder, you can say, well, hey, where do you want this thing to go across to? So you don't have to send, you know, everything everywhere. But then, you know, just for these given folders, you know, you can see, hey, are these up to date for this device? You know, like what's going on, how many files, right? You know, so there's whatever, 4.5 gig of stuff going on. And, you know, at the moment, oh, right, my phone is connected to my computer 3, and those are good. These others are, you know, offline or what have you. But the end result is that you have something which feels basically the same as having a cloud service, but there's no cloud. App Store is kind of an interesting one. Because, again, the App Store was this thing that popped in and changed the idiom, right? Is all of a sudden you've got this intermediary sitting there saying, well, hey, what apps can you have? And also, thanks, I'll have some money in the middle of using them. So there's this great thing called Obtainium, which is an alternative to an app store. And what you have is the applications that I have here, these are just getting pulled straight from the releases from these projects, because all of these projects are open source projects that are nearly all on GitHub. And what you're doing is you're just pointing to the release folder from GitHub. And so here, for example, it goes, whoop, the Obtainium, oh, there's a new one, got the icon up there. Because I've got 1.18 installed and 1.13 has come out. So, you know, here we go, click the update, boop. There's your APK, pick it, and off you go. So what you can have with Obtainium is that same kind of experience of, oh, new releases are coming in, is there an update? But none of this shit is going through an intermediary. It's just you to the app devs. I'm also using Dark IRC. So Dark IRC is part of the DarkFi project. So DarkFi, if you've not heard of it, is a layer 1 anonymous smart contract platform. So Amir would call them, anonymous Ethereum. But something that's happening there, as well as the straight blockchain, is they're actually building tooling for everything. So there is a peer-to-peer layer, which all the tools are running over. So the IRC there is using the IRC protocol, but over, well, this application on mobile is actually, it's running over Tor. So the application is an IRC client, an embedded DarkFi node, that running over Tor and rendered on the device. So with DarkIRC, you have a completely unlinkable, anonymous messaging platform, which is pretty much unlike anything else. I've been using Status as well, if you know Status IM, which has been on the brew for as many years as I have, like those where I was doing the mobile Linux CPP Ethereum. Jared was doing Ethereum J Android. At the time, it was called Sing, S-Y-N-G. Become Status with, so the vision really of Status is to be an everything app, kind of like WeChat, but decentralized. So Status has got a wallet, it's got comms, and it's really working now. It's taken a long time, but it's working. So yeah, I mean, talking a little bit about escaping Apple. So as I've gone through this, it's like, right, my Mac is going away, my iPhone is going away. Well, what does that mean for Apple accounts? And the thing I found, parental controls. You have to have an Apple device to do parental controls, amazingly. They could obviously do that via a website if they wanted to, but they don't. So that sucks. However, I do have a wife who has an iPhone, so that can happen. Apple TV, I haven't got away from it yet. I don't know if I want to or not. You know, it's just entertainment, right? I don't know that there's a lot of surveillance happening on me by having that. But yeah, everything else is gone. And I do miss my iPhone camera because it's a fucking superb camera. It really is. And Pixel, not really doing it. But there you go. Google. But you are still using a Google Pixel and Android open source project. Yes, but that's okay. It's not the surveillance parts of it. There is a clear split, and you can't get too puritanical because those companies, that's where the development's happening. I have not deleted my Google accounts yet. They're just sitting there fallow. Because honestly, deleting them, it's not deleting them. We all know it's not deleting them, right? If I delete them, it just means I don't have access to the data, right? So anyway, fallow, I think, is fine and good. My remaining filthy addictions. Yes, I've quit Facebook 3 separate times, and I have returned because old people use Facebook, non-techie people use Facebook. My old friends in the UK who I haven't seen for many years use Facebook. If I don't have Facebook, I lose contact with people. So, and I mean, I think that's a big problem with all sort of social media, right? If you look at Blue Sky and Nostra and many of these other new things, there's nobody there, right? You haven't got the network effect. So that's kind of hard. I don't know what the answer is to that. Beyond, I don't do a lot on Facebook. It's posting some photos, really. Like, that's about it. I am definitely addicted to Twitter. That's bad. That's bad. What can I say? Yeah, Apple TV, as mentioned. Telegram. A lot of people are using Telegram for a lot of things. I don't think it's hard to like not use Telegram, even though it's obviously very compromised and bad now. I would urge everyone to use Signal. Like, it's not bad now. It's improved. And yeah, YouTube. YouTube's a really tricky one. If you don't use YouTube, you miss out on so much stuff, right? It's just become very ubiquitous. I guess it's like, I mean, another one I could put here is GitHub. You know, the world is very, very addicted to GitHub. You know, it's a horrific point of failure for most open source projects. But yeah. So yeah, you know, conclusions really. I didn't really talk about Linux, but you know, parallel journey I've had here for going from Mac to Linux for my laptop and desktop. That was a lot easier actually. The desktop side, you know, pretty comparable. So yeah, you know, minimizing Apple and Google use is possible, but it was a lot of work to transition, right? Mainly because finding all these different types of apps, right? Just like working out, well, what am I going to use instead? You know, how do I transition my things across, and just time and so on. And yeah, you know, local file copies and backup stuff is actually, it's quite simple. It's quite simple to do, and we've just sort of forgotten. So yeah, I mean, this stuff is a lot of fun, but it's not so easy. And sometimes, you know, I worry, am I LARPing? Am I just LARPing? Are we all LARPing doing this stuff? Does it really make a difference? Maybe. I think you've got to try, right? You've got to try. If you don't try, you've not tried. Anyway, I don't know how we are for time. Do we need to finish?
Yeah, we have one question in the front, and there was one here. That's what we'll take, and then we'll jump on to the next.
Thanks for the talk. And thanks to this conference. This conference is the reason I tried Graphene OS, because the flyers of what people use, I was like, oh, Graphene, someone said they use that. And so I put Graphene, like I went through the stuff you went through, but you didn't talk about a couple things that bit me in Chiang Mai. A, the keyboard. Which keyboard are you using on your phone? Just curious. Okay. Because the Google keyboard is very, very good, and all the open source versions are not in terms of little details. And then what do you do for maps?
Oh, God. Yeah, maps is a fucking right story. So Google Maps is fucking great. It really is so good, right? And you don't realize until you haven't got it. And it's obviously that good because they're spying on everyone all the time, right? They've got so much information and metadata and everything, and so yeah. Sometimes I'm using Google Maps in the browser, right? Not the app, but I'll do a bit of that. I have used OpenStreetMap as well. It's good, but it's shit for looking up names, right? You know, like if you've got a street address, works great. Oh yeah, good luck with that. Also, one thing I am doing is a lot of the time when I need maps, I'm actually in my car. So I've actually been using the really shit maps in the car built-in stuff, which most people would never do anymore, right? You'd be using CarPlay or Android, and you're going to be using your phone maps. So yeah, ship maps there. Trying to use OpenStreetMaps, yeah.
The real question, I tried to do it without Google Play Services Sandbox. I wanted to test that out, and WebAuthn passkeys, is what Google calls their implementation of WebAuthn, does not work with the browsers I've tried. You have to have Play Services installed. Even with that, the experience with like YubiKey, NFC, and passkeys with Graphene OS has been spotty at best. So did you have a problem with passkeys? Did you use passkeys with your browser, whichever browser you use on your Graphene OS, and how was that experience?
We have one more question after that here.
Generally, no. Like, as you say, that I did something to try and use a YubiKey on it, and it kind of didn't work. But I wasn't really using like passkeys or YubiKey much on my mobile before anyway, so I'm just really doing that on desktop, and it's all right. But yeah, like I've really very much minimized what I'm doing within that Google Play like sandboxy area, which is essentially like Uber parking apps. I'm not tapping to pay either. So yeah, I'm just doing less on my phone generally, but yeah, there's some bits that just don't work.
Bob, less on your phone doesn't not a bad thing per se. We have one more question here.
Thanks. I'm part of the team that did the presentation before you, and we're focused on real-time collaboration and end-to-end encryption. And the exercise we do is, okay, the leap to a healthier internet. And I love the presentation and the practicality of it. And if we pick 10 people outside this event, and we try to have a journey and a roadmap for them like that, how long would it take, and how many you think will arrive at the end where you are? Because at the end of the day, this is what matters most, in my opinion, which is you take 10 people out there, and they should arrive with the experience and the privacy concerns and the self-sovereignty part and all these things. Have you thought about this next part as well? Thanks.
I mean, I think if you've got a target end stack, if it's like saying, okay, what I'm doing is probably good enough, right? If you were to go with that assumption, I don't know that it's a great deal of work, but I think most people have just got such a like shit low level, right? They're just like reusing passwords. They've got no fucking clue what they're doing, to be honest. And if you're in that place, then any of these like impedances, I think, are just like going to be a killer. They're just going to be like, I can't even do this. So that's hard. But I mean, I don't think this stuff is necessarily like way worse. But you have to be willing to like go through a bit of proactive effort, and I think most people just they've got no fucking clue. So there's no hope. Cheers, everyone.